Welcome back to the Creative Corner for another Stitches and Stories. I am your hostess, W.A. Ashes, and today we'll be talking about a book called The Killing Plains. First off, look at this hat. Isn't it amazing? It's Hufflepuff themed, so it's in the Hufflepuff colors. It's got a cute little pom-pom. I did not make this hat. I know we knit a lot on here. This hat is done crochet, and it is done by an author and friend of mine named Liliana Shadowlin, and I'm going to put her link in the description below so that you guys can go check out her stuff. And if you'd like a hat, go help her out, or a scarf set. I got a hat and a scarf set, and I did the Harry Potter ones because she donates so much of them to the Trevor Project, and so I did Hufflepuff. And I haven't read the books, don't come for me. I haven't read the books, I've seen the movies, but I know what house I'm in, and I like the colors, so I went with it. So today we are going to be reviewing The Killing Plains by Sherry Rankin. It is 365 pages. It's fiction, mystery, thriller, and crime. I started it February 1st, finished it February 3rd, and it came out this year. I found out about this book through Prime Reading. I don't think I would have found out about it otherwise. Uh, it looks like it's a debut novel. I loved it, but it was very easy to solve, okay? So I was probably 20% of the way through this book, and I already knew who the murderer was. And I'm not gonna lie, I spent a lot of the book frustrated because I knew who it was, and it felt like the person wasn't even being considered at all. And so, and for most of the book, they aren't being considered, all right? And so I was like, what is going on? But basically, this is a case of several red herrings. All right. So our main character gets called back into the town, into this city, small town. I'm not quite sure if it's a city or a small town. It kind of seems like it's in the middle grounds, kind of like the place where I live, where it's not a full-blown city yet, but it's got the makings of one. All right. And so she gets called back to this place where her husband's family had lived. Her husband died because of someone was mad at her. She's a police officer, and someone was mad at her, and so to get back at her, they killed her husband and her daughter. And so it's just her and her grandson, and they go back because her mother-in-law called her and said, I need you to come back. I need you to prove that this son of mine, who everyone thinks did this stuff, um, is innocent. I know he couldn't have do it. I know he's not the murderer, but no one believes me. And so because she feels like she never made peace with her husband's family and never made ends meet there, like never had closure, she goes back to help, and she connects with her brother-in-law, who is her husband's like basically identical twin. And I will admit I kind of rooted for them to have a romance, all right? I did really much. But she states over and over again that it's a little weird for her because he looks so much like her husband. He's a different person and he acts different, but some of the things he does, some of the things he says, and his physical looks are so much like her husband that she doesn't know if she could have a romantic relationship with him simply because she doesn't know if she could separate with romance him between his brother, and she doesn't feel like it's fair to him. But there is also another romantic interest in this book who is a psychiatrist. I do like him too. There is no actual romance in this book, okay? No romance actually happens. I just kind of ship them together. It is implied that she's interested a little bit, but they don't actually start dating, okay? With no one in here. She doesn't start a relationship with anyone. All right, so I think the purpose of this book is to show the bonds of families and how they harbor each other's secrets, as well as the importance of breaking generational trauma and exposing generational secrets, okay? So I found my family in this book in a weird way, a way that I wasn't planning to. Not very many books. Honestly, this is the first book I've ever read that, how do I want to phrase this, okay? Let me think a minute. There aren't very many books in life where you read a book and a character in it seems exactly like a person you know, like almost to a T, almost eerily so, and to the point where you wonder if someone knew someone you know. Now, I'm pretty sure I don't know this author. I'm pretty sure the author does not know my two uncles. that this book made me think of, okay? Um, but it opened up some discussions in my family just because I got to thinking about one of them. We're not going to discuss one of them, okay? One of them we're just going to leave in the shadows for this because I don't want to be pulling up family drama and have someone watching this and then be like that that's not how this person said that this happened or something like that. We're just going to let that go because it was ages ago and we're not going to talk about it, all right? But this other uncle of mine we're going to talk about. And so if you are my family and you are watching this, I am sorry if this triggers you. I will be as vague as possible. I will not use our uncle's name. I will not use your brother's name, whatever you want, or your cousin's name. Um, but I'm going to talk about it because it's related to the story. So I have an uncle who, when I was younger, babysat me all the time. He was my favorite uncle. I loved him, okay? When I got older, my family got a phone call that he was accused of doing something inappropriate with a minor, and I could not believe it. I was like, what the heck? Like, I could not believe it. This guy had watched me my entire life, and I trusted him more than anything. Uh, he had stood up for me, protected me against other things that had happened in the past, and always had my side, always had my back. I saw him as very responsible. Granted, when I was a kid, he was a teenager, so when I was a teenager and found this out, he was an adult, okay? My uncle did plead guilty, and he said that it was a one-time occurrence. That does not forgive what happened, okay? He said that he got mixed up and stuff, and he really regrets it. He went to jail for a while, and now he's out, okay? Because of this, though, there's a lot of restrictions that are placed on people when things like that happen, okay? My family is a foster care family. Everyone on my dad's side of the family and my immediate family did or does foster care, okay? And so there's always been kids coming in and out of the houses. Because of this incident, he was not allowed to be within so many yards of a school, and he was not allowed to be around minors, all right? When you have a family who there are minors around all the time and this happens, that means regardless of the bonds that you had with them beforehand, before all this, regardless of what you think or feel about the actions, you basically cannot see them, all right? Like, when my grandmother died, we had a funeral for her. Of course, he did not come to the funeral. And I had to ask my mom the other day if it was because of the rules placed on her. She does not know. She's not sure if it's because he wasn't allowed to be around minors, and there were plenty of minors there, or if they would have allowed him to come under stipulations. Either way, he had to send a letter instead, and he didn't come in her place. So I have not seen this uncle of mine, who I love dearly, since I was a preteen, okay? Um, I don't know where he is. I also asked my mom if she knew where he was because I got this book got me thinking of him. And she told me the last place that she knew where he was, but she doesn't know if he's still there now. I'd have to actually reach out to my grandfather and ask because I know my grandfather probably still has contact with him because that's his adopted father. But it's one of those things that when you're a kid, you don't understand quite all what had happened, and you don't know who all it impacted and who all bringing it up to would cause fresh open wounds, okay? And so I did not expect to find something like that in this book. I'm gonna be honest. But it made me be on the mother-in-law side in here because I wanted the uncle in this book proven innocent. I wanted all of that had happened to him to be proven as an injustice because of the fact that a similar thing had happened in my family. So in here, there's a main character who's off the screen. Okay, they're not on the screen, but they're talked about repetitively. Our main character is a female. It's a girl cop. Okay, and she is solving this murder mystery. But what happened is basically when her brother-in-law was a young adult slash barely fresh out of a teenager. A lot happened to him. He was accused of inappropriately touching a boy at church. Okay? And I'm not going to tell you if that was cleared or not. It's part of the story. It's kind of one of the many things that makes you kind of doubt if you know who the person is or not who actually murdered things in here. But he's accused of that when he's still pretty young, all right? His parents, in order to stop anything from happening to him, go to the family that accused him of this and basically buy their silence, okay? And then later on, only probably a few years later, because now he's still a young adult, but he's getting up there to like full adulthood kind of thing, more like 25-ish probably, he goes to a pond and he finds a dead body. And he knew this boy. It's a kid, and it's a boy, and he knew him. And immediately, because of his past, the cops suspected him. And it is important to note here that this person in the book, they say that he has a disability, okay? And so he got really anxious when he was pulled in by the cops and separated by his family, and basically they coerced an admittance from him. And they got him to plead guilty, even though later on he told his mom that he wasn't guilty, and his mom believed him. They got him to plead guilty, and he served time for it. Okay, he gets out. Right after he gets out, another murder is committed. This murder is a duplicate murder. Okay, it looks exactly like the other one. Because they don't have any rock hard evidence against him, and the system has changed. This happens during a time frame of development for the police. All right, so they suspect him, but they can't take him in at this one. All right, and so they suspect him, but they can't actually arrest him, and he refuses to go in really for any questioning and stuff. And then later, he is found dead. All right, he is found strangled to death by his pet python. All right, so the mother-in-law does not believe that he did this. She says she knows without a doubt that he could not have done this. So she calls the police officer in. I'm going to give you a little spoiler here. I don't think it's much of a spoiler because they kind of lean straight from the beginning that it's not him, all right? But the spoiler is that he did not do it. In fact, he didn't do any of them. All the stuff that he's been accused of is not him. And our cop slowly finds all this out because she sets out to find one murderer, the one who did the last murder, and then she ends up uncovering the truth about everything, and then uncovering family secrets by her other brother-in-law, who is running the family business, and secrets from her sister-in-law, and secrets about their relationship that they didn't tell anyone. And she's always felt like her mother-in-law did not love her. Like, she was always the black sheep of the family, kind of because of what she did. And she and her husband moved away from the farm instead of staying on the farm with the business like everyone else. And then she blames herself for her husband's death and their daughter's death. And her mother-in-law implies several times that she kind of wants her grandson to stay with her on the farm because her grandson, Satchel, really loves the farm. All right, he loves it a lot, and he has a lot of trauma because he was the one who found his mom and his grandfather's bodies. Okay, and so he has a lot of trauma that he's working through too, and he has self-harm issues. He burns himself, and so that's another trigger warning you should definitely watch out for in it. And this deals a lot with mental illnesses, brain development, and what makes a good guy and what makes a bad guy to a degree. Like, if you go into this and you don't know much about murder mystery, you may not know who the murderer is within the first, it's a weird sound, within the first 20% of this book. You may not, okay? Because the murderer does a really good job of hiding in plain sight. However, if you're like me and your brain nitpicks at little things, then you might be like, wait, this part doesn't add up, and this person couldn't have been there when this person said they were. It would have had to have been this person, and this person had a connection to this person, but not that one. There's a lot of red herrings in here. This book is packed full of stuff that is meant to throw you off the murderer's case, okay? The cop in here finds so many different crimes, all right, before she finds the murderer. She unravels tons of other things. And it's all a red herring. It's one giant big red herring. The ending is really good. I don't think she would have gone in guns blazing because of the fact that at the end, the murderer does not know that they've been caught. All right, the murderer thinks that they are in the clear. And considering the situation, the murderer has a hostage at the time that they are confronted. Okay? And considering the situation of where they have the hostage at, I'm not an officer, I'm not a police officer. Okay? But I don't think it was probably smart to go in with a gun at that point, because I feel like it would have done kind of like what it did and forced the person to put the hostage in even further harm way, kind of thing. But it was a really good book. That being said, this was very hard for me to rate, and I'm very happy that we have the review reel that we have, because I wasn't sure how to rate it, and I went and read some other reviews. I don't know if I'd consider the other reviews fair. I kind of wonder if they were at the same place as me and they just didn't know how to review it, because it's got a lot of 3 stars. And 3 stars isn't necessarily a bad review. 3 stars is literally legit 100% right in the middle, right? If you're working on a 5-star scale. I know a lot of authors complain about getting 3 stars, but I don't consider a 3-star review a bad review. I consider 2-star and 1-star reviews to be bad reviews, okay? Not 3. 3 is average. If I thought a book was okay and I wasn't really into it or anything, I might give it a 3, alright? But this one I didn't know how to do, and I felt like it deserved more than a 3, but I wasn't sure if it was a 5, so I was very happy for our Will on this one. So basically, I looked at the characters, gave 5 for characters. Every single character in here is uniquely made. They all have different personalities, different names. It's very easy to tell them apart. They all have different stories. The author went so far to give them all different backstories, and you learn about them, and you feel bad for them, and sorry, and you learn so much about this little town that you almost feel like you're part of it. Writing, I gave 5 stars. She did amazing with her wording and her descriptions. And I really enjoyed this story. I gave it 5 because it hit me in the place that I wasn't expecting to be hit, and I couldn't put it down. I did not want to put it down at all. I could have finished it the first night, even the second night, but there are some hefty topics in here that I felt like I needed to take a break from. So I did give it 5 in enjoyment. Setting is 5. It's in Texas, and it's in a desert. And you would think that there is not much to say about that, but oh boy, there's a lot to say. She's very descriptive in her setting. She's very descriptive about the crime scenes. Not descriptive enough that I would classify this as an 18+ book, but descriptive enough that if you have a queasy stomach and you go into this murder mystery book, you need to be aware, because she describes a bloated body. She describes a rabbit dying by suffocation. On that mark, the rabbit dying of suffocation. There was one review I read that they said that they docked him a star because the description of the rabbit's paws was wrong when it was suffocating. And they said it was just something that bugged them because they know a lot about rabbits. I don't know a lot about rabbits. I don't know what a rabbit's paws look like, okay? I thought the scene was good for what it was done, alright? And so I had no problem with the scene, but like I said, I'm not huge in the rabbits like that person was. So, I mean, the author here, when you're an author and you're writing a book, you do a lot of research. But if I was writing a book like this, and I had a scene where a python strangled a rabbit, I don't think I'd take the time to Google what the bottom of a rabbit's paw looked like. I just assumed that a rabbit's paw looks like a paw, like a cat paw, which is how she describes it a little. Um, so I kind of get where the author was coming from here. There was probably a lot of other things that the author was trying to keep track of. And so I say let the rabbit paw slide is what I say. Readability gave it 5. Really easy to read, really nice to read. There's not a lot of giant vocabulary words in it. There's some, but it's not drastic. It's good. Plot, I gave it 4. I gave it 4 because A, I knew who the murderer was 20% of the way through, and B, I felt like the ending was a little off. Like how the murder was handled. I felt like it was knowing the history that our main character had with her family being targeted and stuff, going in guns blazing just seemed a little out of character for her. She had been very careful and precise up to this point, and then she just kind of let it all go. But also, a family member, one of her family members, was being held hostage. Her grandson was being held hostage by the murderer. And I would assume, obviously, haven't been in this position, don't ever want to be in this position, but I would assume that if a child that you are responsible for is being held hostage by a bad person, you would probably make some irrational decisions because you are not thinking clearly. You were thinking emotionally at that point, not logically, because you're emotionally attached. And up until this point, she was thinking logically, and then this happened, and her emotional side flipped on, and then her brother-in-law had to help out and kind of stick to that logical side, where up until then he'd been acting emotionally, so there was a little bit of a flip side there. So I did give it 4 for plot. When I added those all up and I divided them, it got a 4.7, I believe. It was higher than a 4.5, so we rounded up and it got a 5-star review. And I feel like it's deserved. That's why we're doing this will, so that I can feel more like I'm giving fair reviews and not just being overly nice, because I tend to be overly nice. All right. I did write down a couple of my favorite quotes from here. One is families are like I can't read my own writing. Families are like powder kegs. The slightest spark and everything goes boom. And the other one is there's no closure with family. Family is like a spider web, but web is strong. Okay? I loved those 2 quotes. I think the closure one really stood out to me. There's no closure with family. Family is like a spider web, but webs are strong. Because there is no closure with family. Okay? I see people who say, I'm going no contact with my family. And I understand that sometimes you have to. I myself can't imagine doing that. I myself just, there would never be enough closure there for me to say goodbye to someone that I had had in my life this whole time. But I highly recommend this book. Some trigger warnings. There is, of course, self-harm. An elementary student commits self-harm through burning. There's trauma. There's death scenes descriptions. There is the death of a hamster described. I kind of got a little queasy over that one. The death of the hamster is an accident, but they do tell you that the hamster was smushed. And so, I mean, take that as you will. There's another quote I liked that was, if a man breaks small rules, he'll break big ones too. And there's a strong matriarch in here. This isn't a patriarchal family. This is a matriarchal one. And the patriarch has died, and the matriarch took over, and the matriarch had been abused by him so much, and basically, upon his death, was the happiest she could have been. And when this information gets shared with her daughter-in-law actually become pretty good friends and end up having a good relationship, even though in the beginning of the book it's implied that they don't have a good relationship and that the mother-in-law is hard to please. You find out the mother-in-law isn't exactly hard to please. It was more like she felt like she had to do certain things or else her husband was going to take it out on the rest of the family and on her. Okay? So there is abuse mentioned. There is disabilities mentioned, mental disabilities. There is inappropriate contact with minors mentioned. Um, there is the theme of which adults can and can't be trusted. All the murder victims in here are children. I think that is important to note. Okay. Literally every victim in this, well, every victim related to the main three crimes in here are children. There's another crime that takes place and the victim isn't a child. I would argue that the suspect was the victim, is who I would argue. The poor guy. But they are children, so be aware of that. But theoretically, this doesn't need an 18 plus warning because there is no explicit sex scene in it and there is no explicit language. There are descriptions, though, of gore and stuff. I don't know what you'd classify as gore. It's not like descriptions of blood, but there's a description of a strangled body. There's a description of a body that had been left in a pond. There's a description of a strangled rabbit. There's a description of a squashed hamster. So, I guess check with yourself. Okay, read it if you think you can handle it. I did like it. I enjoyed it. It's one of the things that I would call a rare treasure, where I would have never, had this not popped up and been offered to me for free through Prime Reading, I probably would have never picked this book up. It would have never even been in my vicinity of books that I look at, okay? But I just happened to have Prime that month and decided, you know what, let's go look. And I had this one and another one that I plan on reading that were crime thrillers, and I've been wanting to read more thrillers. And so I was like, all right, we'll pick it up and see how it goes. What's the worst that happens? I get sick to my stomach and decided to close it. I mean, I made it through the Southern Book Club's Guide to Hunting Vampire Slaying, and I made it through Jonathan Franzen's Corrections, and then I made it through Sarah's Key. And so I feel like if I made it through those three books and completely read them, then I can make it through almost any book. All right, that's just how I feel, especially that vampire one. And so I was like, we'll give it a shot. The worst that happens, I decide to close the book and not read it, and I ended up liking it. So I'd go pick it up if you can. I do think that the audience is for adult mystery lovers, but YA teen mystery lovers might enjoy it. The main character is a grandma in her um 40s. Her daughter had the kid young. So I mean, they won't really connect to the main character age-wise, but there is another teenage character in here that they might connect to, and she's written very, very well. One sentence book or book review, great book, but easy to solve. So, yeah, 5 stars for me, and that is The Killing Plains by Sherry Rankin, and I highly recommend it. So, go pick it up if you can. And our next book that we will be reviewing, not today, but on another day, will be The Christie Affair. So, if you're thinking about reading that, just know that that will be the next one coming up. So, if you want to read it and you want to discuss it, you totally can. So, I hope you guys have a great day, and I have a snow day tomorrow, so I'm going to go read in diamond paint, and then tomorrow I'm going to write some books. Work on my book to snare a spider because it needs done. So, bye guys. Love you all. Thanks as always for being part of this community.